Hi everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Charlie Knox. I work for a company called PlaceWorks. We do city planning and transportation consulting for cities around the Bay Area and around California, and it's our privilege to be involved with this community in San Mateo in the update of the general plan. So this is a small group, however, it's a powerful group. And we had a similar workshop, the exact same workshop this morning, and we had 10 tables. But the exercise works the same way today, so I'm really thankful that you're here and participating. Hopefully each of you have had a chance to register your ideas or opinions on these sheets on the wall. What do you like, what do you dislike, what would you change? If you didn't, you can always do it later. On the back of your agenda is a comment card that allows you to make an individual comment. I'm going to show you a website address, Strive San Mateo, in a few minutes, and there are many, many, many ways to participate. So it's really important you're here today. You're also, along with our City Council and Planning Commission and General Plan Subcommittee, you are ambassadors to the community. If you get excited about things you hear today, or angry, or happy, whatever it is, try to enlist some help from your neighbors, other people you know in the community, family members. You can do it online, you can come to the next set of workshops, you can come to the next meetings. I'll give you all that information on the schedule. But main message is thanks for being here. Would everyone from our consulting team and city staff raise your hand? So you'll see we have a lot of help, and each table has at least one facilitator who will help you through this exercise, which is basically to come up with at least a couple statements about what you would like to see in San Mateo between now and in the year 2040. What's your vision for San Mateo? This is an extremely important part of a general plan update process. I'll get into what a general plan is in a second, but this really helps frame the conversation through the whole project and afterwards when the City Council are making policy decisions about development and transportation and everything you can think of that goes into the structure of the city. The general plan is a guide for all those things. So this is a very important step in the process. Let's see, do we have General Plan Subcommittee members here today? Yes, we do. Adam. Planning Commissioners, Diane. Anybody else I've missed? Okay. So that was the opening activity are these posters, which can be active through the whole day. That was welcome and introductions. Now this is your presentation. After the presentation, I'll just ask if there are any quick questions, and then we'll go into the meat of today's agenda, which is the small group exercise. So here's what I'm going to cover in the next 5-10 minutes. And most of you know this. Why is that lock symbol on? Do we care? I guess we don't. As most of you know, a general plan is the constitution or the blueprint for development in a city. Every city in California, there are more than 400. Every county, there are almost 50, has to have a general plan by state law. And the general plan gets updated fairly regularly, every 10 to 15 years usually. And it's basically the set of guiding principles, goals, and policies for what the city is going to do around things like sustainability and climate change, traffic and transportation, housing for everybody in the community, density, those things. And it starts with the vision statement, which is what we're working on today, which, as I said earlier, is a guide not just in this process for coming up with policy statements, but afterwards when people come in with development ideas or proposals on how to use land, there often is referral back to the general plan. And most people who live in any community who have tried to do something on their property know when you go to the zoning counter, either physically or virtually online, the first question is really, what can I do with my property? It's zoning. But that zoning is informed by, and in some cases constrained or opportunities are created by what's in the general plan. So the general plan is in the background working all the time. Another very important part of a general plan process is the community building that happens in situations like these. And I am hopeful and almost willing to guarantee you will come out of today's exercise knowing more about your community, more about each other, more about your neighbors, and feel better about San Mateo as a community that really has common shared values. So by state law, general plans have to have what are called elements. They are these subjects. They do not have to be in chapters titled the same thing. Some cities have 15 general plan elements, some have 3 or 4, but they all have to cover the city's policies and guidance on these subjects. And our general plan was last updated almost 10 years ago, and this update really focuses on transportation and land use, which really are the two things that are really of most importance to us right now because traffic is bad and housing is expensive. The goals of this particular project, number one, is this is a community building effort. Number two, we really need to confirm with the community what kind of place do we want to be over the next 20 years. We want to talk about the issues that we need to address in that effort, and how we're going to get there with what kinds of tools. The last bullet really just is intended to show you there's a lot of things the city is actively working on, all of which coalesce into general plan statements, whether that's a goal, a policy, or a program to follow. So all these things are either recently done or in process. Sue Ellen from Public Works is here, and she is overseeing the bike plan that's ongoing, which will feed back and forth information, data, community input on one, and the general plan are informing each of the two processes. We also have a downtown master plan that's being updated currently, same situation. San Mateo has deep roots. There's a lot of families that have been here a long time who've seen a lot of change. It's the kind of community where people can say, well, I liked it in the year 19 whatever, how can we do that again? Well, maybe we can, or maybe the future is a time to do something different. Economic sustainability is incredibly important. Part of the reason we have challenges with housing and transportation is because the economy is so strong, and San Mateo is a major hub for a number of different industries that are thriving right now. Just a quick look at the project schedule. We are well into the vision and goals, and that'll be followed by what are called land use alternatives, which basically are different ways at achieving the same vision that you're talking about creating today. So when we know what the vision is, it might mean subtle or major differences between what happens in one place or another on the map, and the same thing for how you get there using the transportation system. Policies are developed later next year, and then there is time that's required and afforded in the process to complete the legally mandated environmental documentation for the project. You probably have all heard of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. So even though this is a program, it's not a specific development project. It's going to build this building here. It will lead to that kind of activity, and all programs, all projects like this in California require environmental review, and in this case, an environmental impact report, which is the biggest, most voluminous type of documentation, and that is set to be done by early 2020, and then to the City Council for final adoption in the summer. Every single piece of information we are generating goes on the website, goes into summaries, gets in front of this general plan subcommittee I'll describe in a few minutes, and also goes to Planning Commission and Council. So it's not just like we do it all in the vacuum and then 2020 we give it to the Planning Commission and say, what do you think? Even this piece today, the vision statement, will go to the general plan subcommittee for its comment, then the Planning Commission and Council. So I'll get to that schedule in a minute. I'm trying to keep my voice here. Public engagement is a huge part of this process. We've already had this morning's workshop. We had a youth workshop on October 25th, which culminated with the students making presentations to the Rotary for Youth and Government Day out at Poplar Creek, and the students had some great ideas. We're going to go on a bus tour probably mid-January, and we're going to do the double-decker bus, which is fun in and of itself and worth doing just to have the experience, but also you see the world in a different way. It's not street level. You see like how intersections are arranged and how buildings fit with the street, and you get some really interesting and different perspectives and comments about how things could be different or what should be conserved in San Mateo. We'll have open houses later to kind of keep reinforming the community about what we've heard so far. We are very focused on pop-up and neighborhood events because there are large groups in the city of San Mateo who are not typically able to come to these kinds of meetings, and that is how we're going to get those voices, both online but also in person, by going through faith-based organizations, non-governmental organizations, partner agencies, finding people where they already are at outdoor events or sporting events or something on a weekend. And surprisingly, I think, sometimes when you catch people when they're not really even thinking about planning and land use is when you get some great ideas. So thank you for being here in this structure. We also hope to see you out at a festival or some other event soon. We have a series of online engagement exercises through the process. We currently have one going on right now that you're welcome to participate. I'll get to the URL for that in a minute. We are hopefully hitting you on email lists and social media with announcements about the process and how you can participate and give input. And we have the more formal meetings of our General Plan Subcommittee and the City Council and Planning Commission. So here's the website, Strive San Mateo. The left side is the home screen, so it kind of tells you how it's set up and how you can find out different pieces of information about the general plan. The right side is what happens when you hit participate online. So there's 6 options. The one on the bottom left, I'm going to try to use this clicker, see if it works. This one here lets you take the kinds of ideas we're talking about today, rank them in order that you think are most important. We're going to do a little bit of a ranking exercise today, mini version. And then you can also just add things. Not everybody in this day and age wants to be identified by every parameter they can, so you can tell us about yourself. If which neighborhood you live in is important to your comment, you can do that. You can also see what other people have said under participation results. And this is like the, excuse me, this is like the exercise on the wall. You can also upload a photo and say, fix this pothole. No, I'm just kidding. That's Public Works. You can upload a photo and say, this is the kind of building I like when you talk about a building with this kind of features or this type of housing. So we talked about most of this. I think the key piece is how we leverage our contacts. So hopefully everybody in this room knows at least one other person you're pretty sure would be interested in this. And let's get the word out there and get more people to these meetings and to participate online. The General Plan Subcommittee that I described before is somewhat unique to San Mateo. Some General Plan updates have big committees that are appointed at large. Some have just the City Council or just the Planning Commission. And we have something in between that we as a group, City Council, Planning Commission, staff, consultant, think is really customized to San Mateo. And that is the City Council appointed 7 people, including 2 council members, one of whom is the mayor, and 2 commissioners each from Sustainability and Infrastructure, which used to be Sustainability separately from Public Works, 2 from Planning Commission and 1 from Parks. And these folks are kind of the mega ambassadors for the project, but they also are a filter for comment. So this General Plan Subcommittee meets regularly. They have at least 8 meetings over the next 2 years. Hi, welcome. They've had 2 already, which you may have been to. And they will look at the input, all the input we've had on the process so far and say, here's what we see we think that might be emphasized for the City Council or the Planning Commission to consider. So at the end of today's meeting, we will take, and at the end of the online exercise that's going on as a complement, we'll take all that information, we'll try to coalesce it, we'll try to say, here's what we, city staff and consultant, think we heard, here's where we think the vision statement themes are coming out, what do you think? And they might say, well, yes, but change this, or how about something we think we heard and got missed? So they're a really good filter and kind of a reality check and verification for our whole process. So it's not just like you say something, it comes out, and it's a planning commission. There's a step in between where you have folks acting on your behalf to try to make sure we've heard everything correctly or can adjust it if we haven't. Their meetings are recorded, so you can go back and watch them. It takes a couple weeks for us to get those set up, and we're still working on the first set of 2, so it'll probably still be a couple weeks before that's a reality online. And every meeting includes public comment. So it's not like you're just watching in a fishbowl what they're doing. You can actually say, I think you should think about these things. And they're all open to the public. So what is a vision statement? Well, if you've read the current general plan, it has more of a kind of a preamble, 2 or 3 paragraph, can I have water? Set of statements about San Mateo is a place where things happen. Well, that's totally fine, and we didn't give you the current general plan vision statement because we want you to really think about the future. But what a vision statement does is it says, this is the kind of place I want to be in. This is the place I want San Mateo to be. And one of the things I told the students when we started their piece was it's okay to be self-centered. It's okay to have a perspective of, I would really like this. I would like a bike bridge that goes right from my house to right wherever it is I want to go. That's great, but also think about everybody in the community. Think about social issues and environmental justice and about, is it possible to get from one place to another? Maybe it's okay for me because I use this kind of transportation, but what about somebody else? So really try to expand your thinking into what kind of place will San Mateo be in 2040. And our exercise today is kind of multifaceted. On your tables you have a map that's somewhat stylized but shows you kind of key features about community character. One of the interesting things about this is when the students saw it, it kind of sparked them on the selfish but okay side to say, all these commercial areas are great if you want food, but they're all near the elementary school. students and the elementary school kids can't go out and get food. We're high school students. We want to go out and get food, and there's nothing near us because all the high schools are more up in the hills and further from El Camino. And so they actually came up with a statement that said something like, create ways to get food that we want for lunch near us at lunchtime, which is great. I mean, it actually has a kind of a larger effect on thinking community-wide about, do we have goods and services close by? And the next place it took them was, what about neighborhood markets? Long time before these high school students were alive, it was much more common to have small neighborhood markets throughout San Mateo. Is that something we can get back? So again, think about the immediate, think about 20 years from now, what kind of place do you want San Mateo to be? And think citywide. And again, as I said before, this will be very important because as we get into the policy statements that are going to help guide City Council decision making in the future, this will be helping to set that framework. So just as one kind of generic example of how you get from the kinds of things we're looking at today to a policy statement, you could have a vision statement that says, hey, everybody should have good access to transit. One of the goals, there could be more than one goal, is, hey, more people should be using transit. It's good for the environment, it's less stressful, relieves traffic congestion. And one of many possible policy statements to implement that would be, well, if we're gonna get more people to ride transit, what about the people coming into our community? They're going to jobs. Would they be more motivated if we had some way to work with employers to get them from Caltrain or from bus stops to their place of business? Just one example of how the vision statements you're going to work on will affect policy in the future. So this is the kind of mini view of the calendar, the vision statement process. The online engagement is active. You can go there. If you think of tonight, you think of something like, I wish I'd said something at the table I was at this afternoon, go ahead. You can do it in multiple ways, including just email. We're at the workshops today. This will all be presented to the General Plan Subcommittee in December. And then we'll be back in Planning Commission and Council for acceptance of that vision in January. All right, so what are we doing today? So when we are broken into our small groups when we start the activity. You have a series of both blank places to write a statement and complements that are the same subject heading on the front and then pictures on the back. These are all just provided along with this briefing book that talks about some of the major issues and what developments in the pipeline and what land uses are like in San Mateo. These are all just for your information to help spark your ideas and to help you make the case to your peers at your table why what you think should go in a vision statement is the right language and the right ideas. And so we're going to parse it into those things. First, the ideas. So what we're hoping for from each table is at least 2 statements. So they could be any of these. There's also one at the back called Other. If you decide the idea you want to promote and your colleagues agree doesn't fit into any of those categories, that's fine. These categories are not rigid. We're not trying to guide you towards a certain outcome. We want your best original thinking as a group, but we also want you to go through this exercise that is a microcosm of the general plan about getting other people in the community to see your point of view, understand, and reach some common ground and consensus. So try to pick 2 topics that are going to be your most important. If you get through all 6 or 7 or you make up your own, that's great. But we'll choose, the group should each choose one presenter. And at the end of this 50 minutes or so, that presenter will represent your top 2 vision statements up here at the microphone and explain why these were important. So there's the step of first introducing yourselves and get to meet each other, know who your facilitator is. The facilitator will act as your scribe. And you'll see as this progresses, your facilitator will start to say, okay, I think we're starting to coalesce around some language here. How about if I put it in these words? And then you can say, well, maybe, or change it, or I like this word better. But the facilitator's job is to help you get to at least 2 vision statements in those subjects or other subjects, and then choose a speaker. And I'm going to stop now because my voice is about gone. But are there any questions about the general plan or how the vision statement fits into it or what we're doing today? And we have a 4th table. Do we have a 4th table? Yeah, awesome. All right. Yes?
You had mentioned that those required elements to the general plan. Are those the only elements that will be addressed in this general plan, or are there additional?
That is a very good question. So the question was, these are the state-mandated, state law required elements to a general plan, and the question was, are all of them going to be addressed? Are only some of them. So technically, this 2018 general plan update that's going to result in a 2040 vision and land use diagram and circulation map and goals for the general plan is supposed to take the city through 2040. Where the focus is on land use and circulation, A, because those haven't been updated in a long time, B, because the other ones have, and C, because that's where our issues seem to lie. But if anything you decide as a community, we decide as a community, needs to change something in one of the other elements like conservation or safety, we'll have to do that, because first of all, it's a good idea, and if we come up with new good ideas and they affect other of those subject areas, we need to do that. Second, by law, a general plan has to be internally consistent. So if we come up with something that says we're going to do something different with transportation to get across 101 to the slough, and it means we have a safety element issue that says you can only do that if you do certain things with liquefaction or building bridges in certain locations or whatever that is, I'm just kind of trying to think out loud, then that will happen. So again, the focus is on land use and circulation, which are the two most commonly tinkered with elements of any general plan, because those are the things that tend to change the most rapidly. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't also be looking at noise and open space conservation and safety. We have not yet as a community talked about the structure of the plan and whether that's something that should change or not, but this discussion will inform those later discussions. Did that answer your question?
Did it? But at least another question.
Sure.
So how do you address land use and circulation without infrastructure?
Without infrastructure?
Without addressing water, sewer, all of those other things?
Right. So the question was, how do you address land use and circulation without all the utilities and infrastructure that go with them? That's all fair game. That's all fair game. And I think if like one of your vision statements has to do with only allowing certain types of development if they can prove that certain infrastructure is in place or they pay for it or something like that, that will still go in land use. It may also have something that goes into safety or conservation, but those kinds of things will normally stay in land use, and the transportation infrastructure will normally stay in the circulation element. But the implicit point is everything is related. Everything in a general plan affects everything else, and it's the same thing is true in the reality on the ground. You cannot make a decision about where activities go without thinking about how people get there, and you can't think about how people get there without thinking maybe this transportation infrastructure or this pedestrian bridge or this bike path needs to change. And that is one of the major educational features of the general plan update for the community, is you really see how important every little piece of everything that the city is involved in is to everything else. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
San Mateo is not an island unto itself, so how does our general plan get coordinated with the general plans of the communities around us?
Good question. The question was, San Mateo is not an island. How do we coordinate with the communities around us? So there is CCAG, the regional agency for planning. There are regional transportation agencies like MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission for the Bay Area. There are various functions at the county level that work with the cities. The city is one of 21 agencies that's part of the 21 Elements, the housing initiative in San Mateo County. And every one of the council members sits on multiple boards that are all regional government agencies. How, and I'm getting at the specific question, how does our general plan relate to other cities' general plans? Is each city has something called a sphere of influence around it that is looked at as a place where it is possible the city could grow by expanding its boundary and therefore having land use control. And the sphere of influence is kind of intermittent in places around the existing city boundary. Other cities have those same spheres, and there's something called the Local Agency Formation Commission, or LAFCO, in San Mateo County that controls and has relationships with the cities over, if you're going to go in the hills, you're going to need this kind of infrastructure. Is that really going to happen? Maybe that shouldn't be in your sphere. Maybe that should stay unincorporated county. So the city boundaries touch each other, but the city's sphere of influence is sometimes run over into unincorporated land. And so the general plan for the county can inform what those unincorporated areas are that San Mateo has some jurisdiction over, and vice versa. But possibly the bigger implication of your question is, if some of these issues are regional, what can we do about them just by changing rules or changing our approach in San Mateo? And the answer is a lot, not everything. Like San Mateo is not going to, even if we have the best general plan ever, we're not going to solve regional traffic, but maybe what we can do is affect regional traffic in a way that is a model not just to help like cut through traffic in San Mateo and make things safer and more convenient for our residents and community. But maybe it's also something that can figure into the larger regional conversation. Like, we did this in San Mateo, look, it's working. How about if we do this up and down the Grand Boulevard or the Caltrain line or 101? Any other questions? Okay, so thank you for being here. Introduce yourselves. Get going. As you introduce yourself, start thinking about the most important things for you. Use our keywords if you like them. Use others. And I will come around to each table and see how we're doing. But thank you again. So first up, we have Esme from table six. Okay.
All right, so we had a great conversation about reimagining our streets as cultural spaces as the first foundational steps towards building that community and that want and need for taller, denser housing, more affordable housing, mixed-use communities. So under the banner of sustainability, our vision is a city that maintains its commitment to family and community and businesses in the most equitable and sustainable ways by building taller, denser housing with community benefits. And under community life and public health, our vision is to reuse and reimagine the built environment, streets and parking that allow people to interact with each other.
So the two areas that we focused on are basically the two main areas of this general plan update: housing and circulation. For housing, our general vision is that San Mateo needs a variety of housing that meets the needs of different income levels, and that we need various options for people at different stages of life. So, for instance, we need, housing for people who are just coming up, young people, children of people who already live here. I mean, children are our future. This is about our future, so we need to make sure that, the next generation can live here as well. But this also includes teachers whose families are expanding and need to be able to move into something bigger, but can't find that locally, and therefore we lose those teachers. Again, another general vision statement is that in so many ways we need to make sure that this process, the city, and this update always has inclusivity in mind, and we could go on about all the different ways in which that affects our city and different policy areas. So moving on to our second area, circulation. A similar theme is that we need a city with robust transportation options so people can get around without a car, which is, of course, good for the people who don't have cars, but it also helps potentially get some car drivers off the road, which is then good for those remaining car drivers. Continuing, we need services closer to people. Somewhat similar to the idea that came out of the youth workshop. We would love it if markets could be closer to different populations. So not just talking about cars or, motorized vehicles, we also need to look at safety for bicyclists and pedestrians. There seemed to be a general feeling in our group that San Mateo is more unsafe for pedestrians and bicyclists than it ought to be, or that perhaps it is in comparison to other cities, and so this is something we need to work on. We also, in sort of in conjunction with that, we noticed that there are differences in the quality of transit options on opposite sides of 101, so that's kind of an equity barrier. I guess the one final thing, a little bit more granular, is that we need to think about how we measure all of these areas, and so perhaps look even more at getting away from simple measurement of number of trips to the character of all of those trips. So for instance, vehicle miles traveled for different trips. And I think that's about it. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lisa from Table 2, and I will attempt to read this. So our statement or vision for housing is inclusive and equitable community with a broad range of housing types that support education, commercial, social, and recreational activities. The housing would have greater density and heights around transit and would include, consider the architecture of the surrounding neighborhoods and basically have some architectural integrity. And our vision, this one's really bad, so see if I can muddle through this one. Provide a transportation system that incentivizes alternative modes of transportation, and also ensure equitable access, technological advances, and ferry service from the East Bay. Provide more east-west connections while minimizing cut-through traffic to the existing neighborhoods.
Great.
That's it.
And we got one more. Rafat. All right.
Good, how are you? Okay, my name is Rafat. We are Table 3. And in terms of housing, we got that San Mateo provide housing for residential across the full range income and servicing the full range of special needs. And we also got to see variety of housing in terms of what we can provide for San Mateo. Also, in the process of growth, keep in mind when we're growing in San Mateo, we keep in mind the trash, garbage, pickup, displacement, traffic, jobs, and amenities. Also, the vision was also safe, sanitary, conducive to good health, and stable. In terms of the community life and public health, inclusive design principle for public building, especially for people with special needs and various other needs. More diverse community events throughout San Mateo that cater to people of all ages and abilities. Improve the sense of belonging to San Mateo. Also, flexible and configurable public buildings and recreation centers, accessible by everyone in the community.
Thank you. Well, thank you. That was a great group of ideas with some overlap, but also some real originality from group to group. And I think one of the common threads and one of the things we heard this morning was real ability of community members kind of think about not just the future, but about what isn't working so well now, and how to include the whole community in this, which is really important. So, we heard things like, how do we make it safer for people who walk? But in so doing, I think Justin mentioned this, we're actually benefiting, if you still need to drive, and it's not a value judgment, if you need to drive, it's actually better for you also if we're making it safer for bikes and pedestrians. And what Rafat just said at the end about, it's not just about the design of the buildings themselves, but our public places and public gathering areas designed in such a way that encourages people to participate, be part of community events. And one of the things that we've heard a lot today in this group and in the morning group is just this real sense of how important community is in San Mateo, and how important it is that we don't leave anybody behind. Abilities, ages, ethnicities, which neighborhood you live in. What we want is a place where everyone feels welcome and is able to enjoy the high quality of life and the things that make San Mateo a place that has high quality of life. So I think you should all be congratulated, because I think this is the very beginning of a true community building conversation, which is what the general plan really is all about, and is really, I think, signifies a little bit different approach than we've had in our community about how we think about the future. It's not just buildings, it's not just traffic, it's not just density, it's, are we making San Mateo, are we continuing to make San Mateo a place that we can be proud of and really enjoy? And I think this is a huge step in the right direction. So thank you so much, and please give yourselves some encouragement and applause. And don't forget the important dates. So the next time the General Plan Subcommittee meets, the group appointed by the City Council, they will be filtering and looking through all these ideas. Adam is here from the committee, and they will look at this on December 17th, which means about a week before that. Available online on the website will be the packet for that meeting, and so you'll see the photographs of the statements you made up here. You'll see the scans of these cards that you filled out here. Any comments you've given us, anything that you've done or your colleagues have done online will all be part of that information, and we will be heading into a discussion with the subcommittee about the vision statement, which will be made up of many of these statements. And our job in between is to try to take everything we've heard today, everything we heard from the youth last week, and try to coalesce it into, I don't know how many, it might be 5, might be 7, might be 10 statements that really capture everything you said. And so you guys did a great job today of kind of putting things together that show how things are connected. So, for example, there was one here about amenities and housing, and it wasn't just that they be available for everybody, but also that they accomplish certain things, so that you have a recreational space and open space with housing. And so we're going to try to do the same thing as the staff and consultant team, is put your ideas together in ways that you'll see and you'll look at and say, yes, that is what I said, and it does make sense that that is a vision statement, and that helps me understand what it is I want, and my colleagues, my peers, my friends, the San Mateo community wants the city to be like in 2040. And then you can be the judge of that, and the General Plan Subcommittee will hear your comments, and we'll take a look at it also, and hopefully pass on to the Planning Commission some ideas for their consideration. So with that, thank you so much for being here. Hope you go out and enjoy the rest of a beautiful day, and really appreciate your input.